Michael's the son of a distinguished writer himself and has been acclaimed as one of the most outstanding poets of his generation. And his second book of verse, Acrimony, was published to widespread critical acclaim. And it's from Acrimony that Michael's going to read to us this afternoon.
Your salami breath tyrannized the bedroom where you slept on the left, my mother tidily on the right. I could cut the atmosphere with a knife, the enthusiasm, the spice, rawness, vigor in the choppy air. It was like your signature, a rapid scrawl from the side of your pen, individual, overwhelming, impossible. Things are different now. Your male discriminations, meat and work, have lost their edge. Your teeth are filled, an omnivorous sign. Wherever you are, there is a barrage of noise. Your difficult breathing, or the blaring radio, as thoughtless and necessary as breathing. You have gone to seed like third world dictators, fat heads of state, suffering horribly from Western diseases, whose name is Legion.
You ever at all worried that your relationships with your parents might be affected by your writing poetry about them?
Well, yes, I think I was probably a bit naive. I mean, this book came out 4 or 5 years ago, and I sent them the things ahead of time. I thought that the fact that my father was a writer would protect me from a non-literary response. But it didn't happen. It was better and more honest and maybe even more German to come to them with my concerns and my criticisms.
Walter Benjamin kaufte 1921 Paul Klees Aquarellanlage.
Du bist den Weg für 10 Krane hier. Den Kopf festhalten.
Walter Benjamin kaufte 1921 Paul Klees Aquarellanlage.
My father is something like an immaculate conception to me, has been always. On that side of my family, the history begins with him. My father communicates himself through his books, primarily, if not exclusively. And so, if we want to receive communications from him, we, as I just have, we receive his books, we read his books. It's sometimes like being given a stone when you ask for bread. Mein Großvater, Karl Hoffman, 1873 bis 1944, arbeitete lange im Apollo-Kino in der Helenenstraße in Limbach, Sachsen. Ich kannte ihn gegen sein Lebensende mit seinem Künstlerhut, dem Spazierstock. My father's new book is called The Kinoerzähler, the film narrator, somebody who talks over silent films. And it purports to be about his grandfather, Karl Hoffman, but I think it's actually based on his uncle. Until he was mentioned in the book, I didn't know anything about the figure of my great-grandfather or my grandfather or even about my father's own childhood. I want more, really. I want the facts and details, the truth about my father's life. don't want to hear any more fictional figures. Like a man pleading for his life, you put novels between yourself and your pursuers. Atalanta, always one step ahead of the game. You gave me a copy of your second with the dedication, Michael, something else for you to read. Your disparaging imperative was too much resented for obedience. You were a late starter at fiction, but for 10 years now, your family has been kept at arm's length. We are, as the warts on your elbows, scratched into submission, but always recrudescent. The grandfather in the keynote Taylor is a real person. Was he your real grandfather?
Oh yes.
And he was your physical grandfather called Karl Hoffman.
Oh yes.
Uh-huh.
Well, that should be, of course.
I don't know. I mean, I was.
It's not an invented person at all. No, absolutely not. No, but it's so long ago, people probably don't believe me anymore. But it is.
I think I might have believed you if you told me about him when I was 3 instead of 33. But I think you've now had 30 years in which to make him up.
My grandfather happened not to be one of our topics, the topic of conversation, We never really talked about it. But I told you...
resuscitated as a literary figure, I would suggest, or...
Well, I even...
Yeah, that's right.
I didn't tell Mama about...
No, exactly. I mean, he
doesn't
exist.
But you know it is not invented. I mean,
No,
you know from my
I know only
stories, and I'm sure I mentioned him from time to time, but I didn't really sort of build him up and make him come to life as you do when you write a novel or story about somebody. You really have to bring him to life.
It's very strange to kind of meet somebody for the first time as a kind of full-blown literary figure, because someone reading the book might imagine that Karl Hoffman was the subject of family anecdote and
of somebody what?
The subject of family anecdote and that we would have kind of talked him up and things. It's very strange to meet this person for the first time on the page.
Yeah. But we didn't talk about our family very much anyway, We never talked about our family.
No.
A bit more about your mother's family.
Well, but you see,
about my family. Yeah.
Do you think? But I mean, they were public knowledge, and so they weren't interesting. Whereas I was always terribly interested in yours.
Yeah.
And yours were, to some extent, even still alive, which is a completely unmysterious condition.
It makes him a figure all the more powerful, this grandfather, if he's suddenly...
Yeah. But what if one wants relatives alive or dead and not powerful figures? Can this be all that remains? 2 or 3 weeks a year, sitting at the opposite end of the dinner table from my father. To listen to his breathing, more snorting than breathing, puffing out air through his nose during mouthfuls, chewing loudly with open mouth, without enjoyment. Uninhibited, inhibiting, his only talk of food. And to watch myself watching him, fastidious and disloyal, feeling my muscles through my shirt, an open knife. My own part of the conversation, thin, witty, inaudible, as though I'd spoken in asides for 25 years.
I don't know Michael's writing too well, quite honestly. And then he's a poet, of course, whereas I never wrote poetry in my life. I'm not a poetic person, somehow. I like tense situation, not poetic situation, you know. I like people colliding and telling each other unpleasant truths, you know, which somehow doesn't, has nothing to do with poetry.
This is where my father's books are kept. It's his warehouse. He also keeps other things he's read, he's finished with and doesn't want much. Since I was 14, I haven't had a room in the house, and I've always had to stay where I was put. But I've got accustomed to living with the books. It's sort of, I don't know, it's like being in a sort of lead-lined coffin or something like that. These are things that are meant to survive the apocalypse. But this is my father's first novel, Die Fistelstimme, falsetto voice. Came immediately after Die Denunziation, the denunciation. After the age of 50, a sudden flowering. Half a dozen novels in as many years. Dialogue by other means. His main characters, maniacs. Compulsive virtuoso talkers. Talkers for dear life. Talkers in soliloquies, notebooks, tape recordings, last wills. I'd sort of pushed the Kinoerzähler sideways. I thought it was based on my father's uncle, but in fact, my father assures me it is his grandfather. I feel a little bit suspicious of a book about my father's grandfather, because he's written books about fictional characters before. I'd quite like to learn something about his real grandfather. Der Kinoerzähler is set in Limbach in East Germany in the 30s. It's my father's birthplace. And I've never been there. I think being the son of a fiction writer leaves me with a kind of mania for truth.
They have I should imagine, a complicated relationship since they are both in the same profession. And since this profession is writing. I mean, they are rivals in a way. I'd rather prefer to hear other people's opinion about those two writers in my family. I'm not really used to utter my opinion, or I'm not all that fond of giving opinions or having opinions. I think it's quite interesting to have two writers. Their temperaments probably at times clash, whereas I like to have everything in harmony and running smoothly. And I think art asks for different things.
Hat seinen Sohn 11 Jahre nicht gesehen, seine Rückkehr nicht. He has not seen his son for 11 years and was not expecting his return. Out of breath and completely covered with dust, Lent steps inside. Father! And with his tangled fair curls tumbling into his pale, childlike face, he immediately runs up to his father, immediately throws himself at his feet. I have come, he cries, to kiss your hands, to tell you that now I am back. The lame crane looks about him to see where he may set his foot. And, as the astonished parent does not yield his hand to be kissed, he quickly presses his lips to his father's brilliantly polished lace-up boots. It was difficult to find one's way back into ruptured circumstances. He would need time and indulgence before he could communicate himself, open himself to him. And finally, after a pause, well, don't you even want to know what my journey was like? All that he had seen and enjoyed and suffered? A performance like everything else. What's the point? He wants only his car and his typewriter and his magic marker. Every action he divides into small stages, every traffic light on the way home, and each one he punctuates with a crucified so. I ask myself what sort of consummation is available. Fight, talk literature and politics, get drunk together, kiss him goodnight, as though half my life had never happened.
Michael is going, I think it's a phase, and I hope he's going to write about other things. I don't think I was offended. Gert was. I don't mind. And besides, it's in England. England's far away.
Kann ich Ihnen irgendwas helfen? Was ist Ihr Anliegen?
Ja, wir wollten Limbach besuchen. Das ist die Geburtsstadt meines Vaters.
Ja.
Ja, Limbach ist ungefähr 2 Stunden von hier, nicht wahr? Ich war eigentlich seit vielen, vielen Jahren nicht mehr da. Ich möchte das gerne mal wieder anschauen.
Na, diesem Wunsch steht nichts entgegen.
Ja.
Sie sind jetzt BRD-Bürger, oder?
Bitte? Ich? Nee. Ich bin aus Westdeutschland. Ja. Mein Sohn lebt in England. Dankeschön.
Bitteschön.
When you approached this border, in my case anyway, my heart started beating, and I felt I had a sort of bad conscience, like always when.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, I felt guilty.
Because you escaped. You're a Republiksflüchtiger.
Well, no, I mean, it made you feel guilty somehow, to bother, even if you hadn't done anything. Must be it.
Do you remember all these chimneys?
No, there are no chimneys in my mind. No.
I think psychologically he left East Germany behind him, and it was also hard to get to for us. We all grew up with the fear of East Germany. I think what it offers for me is the lure of the forbidden, and also the hope of sort of overcoming his way of fictionalizing events. I want to, as it were, set the record straight.
Meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren, es ist mir eine besondere Freude und große Ehre, Ihnen Herrn Dr. Gert Hoffman ankündigen zu können, der nach über 40 Jahren in diese Stadt zurückgekehrt ist. Nach seinem Weggang im Jahr 1948 hat er ein wahrhaft kosmopolitisches Leben geführt und von den USA bis Jugoslawien an vielen Universitäten eine Lehrtätigkeit inne gehabt, viele Romane und Erzählungen veröffentlicht. Er hat sich bereit erklärt, aus seinem neuesten Roman, Der Kinoerzähler, zu lesen, der das Leben und Wirken seines Großvaters in dieser Stadt beschreibt, der als Kinoerzähler und Klavierspieler im ursprünglichen Apollo-Kino in dieser Stadt gewirkt hat.
Zuerst vielleicht eine kleine Enttäuschung. Wie gesagt, der Kinoerzähler ist mein letztes Buch. Zwischen diesem Buch und dem vorhergehenden liegt eine gewisse Pause, eine Pause von 2 Jahren, eine Krankheitspause, keine freiwillige Pause.
Gert writes every day, and recently he has been relying more on my help since his eyesight isn't all that good, and he hasn't got the fluency in reading, so he asks me to read larger paragraphs for him, and he always tells me, not so fast, I'm thinking I have to put in things, I can't keep up with you. Now read this again, and then he tells me, wipe this out and add this. And
Kurz und gut, das Buch ist jetzt fertig und ich würde es Ihnen gern präsentieren mit meinen eigenen Worten, mit meiner eigenen Stimme. Das kann ich aber nicht.
It's in a way it's described as in the Kinoerzähler. After the Kinoerzähler does his last bit of cinema narration, he's the same thing happens. He becomes very weak. He doesn't eat anything. He gets a sort of relish for death. It becomes incredibly morbid. It must be what my father went through.
Ohne meine Fantasie, glaube ich, irgendwie.
The Kinoerzähler is the first of my father's books that makes me think it might be his last. When he got up from his bench outside the Apollo, he had a dizzy spell which had pushed him to the ground. The Hellenians, far from lying flatly, waved up and down in front of Grandfather, and so did all the other streets. That was why Grandfather had collapsed. He had barely made it home. "I'm not long for this world," he said quietly. The Kinoerzähler is unlike my father's other books because it moves towards reality rather than departing from it. And what I want to do is to take it seriously as reality and find out what the real facts are about my grandfather. Es ist ein Operettenball. An diesem Punkt, mehr oder weniger, muss das Apollo mit allem, was... It must have been at that moment, more or less, that the Apollo, with everyone in it, was wiped out. Grandfather was put in a box and taken out to the town cemetery of Limbach. It's very hard to say how the Kinoerzähler actually dies. But I think what happens is that he's in the cinema in the Apollo with a lot of kids watching a silly Nazi film. A bomb falls on the building. I was looking for the gravestone of my great-grandfather, Michael Hoffman, the cinema narrator. I found a Walter Hoffman. I guess that's the nearest I'll get here.
Hier haben wir das Begräbnisbuch unserer Kirchgemeinde 1944. Ja. Karl Gustav Hofmann, in Limbach geboren und am 16. Juli 1944, 19:45 Uhr in Limbach verstorben und am 20. Juli auf dem Limbacher Friedhof begraben. Er war Werkschutzmann in Limbach und verstarb im Alter von 71 Jahren, 2 Monaten und 23 Tagen. Und als Todesursachen sind hier verzeichnet Herzfehler, Lungeninfarkt, akute Kreislaufschwäche.
Werkschutzmann?
Ja.
Also, weiß man bei was für einem Werk? Also beim kriegerischen Werk?
Nein, das ist normal. Nach den damaligen Sitzen ist das ein Fabrikgebäude gewesen, wo er zur Wachmannschaft mitgehört hat. Nachtwache oder Pförtnerdienst, das alles war Werkschutz damals.
Und er ist zu Hause bei sich gestorben?
Mit großer Sicherheit, sonst stände etwas an.
Chronisch krank?
Auf keinen Fall, er ist an einer Krankheit gestorben. Der Arzt, der die Todesursache festgestellt hat, ist mit Dr. Peil angegeben.
Weil wir das Gerücht gehört haben, dass er beim Bombenunglück umgekommen ist.
Also das kann nach diesen Angaben hier nicht sein.
Mein Vater hat das alles etwas heroischer dargestellt. Also
das ist sein Recht.
Also im Vollbringen seiner künstlerischen Arbeit.
Also das steht hier nicht.
Ja.
Steht hier nicht.
Nee. Ja, das ist ein bisschen wishful, wie das auf Englisch heißt. Wohl, wie mein Vater das dargestellt hat.
Gut, das ist ja alles leer.
Ja.
Das ist vollkommen verfallen.
Und das erst hier.
And there the family, top above us, the family, they had a boy of my age.
Did they?
Exactly, yes. We went to school together.
What was his
and
name?
I remember his name was Malz.
Malz.
Malz. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and I lost sight of him. Like everybody else. Wonder what happened to him.
In the Kilo Attila, there's somebody called Mali. In some of the misprints. I mean, it's either Mali or Malz.
I don't know.
There is someone called Malz.
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Kilo Attila.
Yeah.
Laufe ich Ihnen zu langsam oder zu schnell? Fragte Herr Cosimo. Der Großvater sagte, gerade richtig. Am I walking too fast for you, or too slowly? Asked Herr Cosimo. Grandfather replied, no, just right. I'm walking in dead man's boots, only no one knows it apart from the two of us. People see me in these boots and imagine they're mine. But they're Herr Malz's. But I must say, if I could have picked them myself, I'd have picked them bigger.
Ja, wo wohnt Sie denn hin?
Guten Tag. Ach, ich habe mal hier gewohnt.
Und wie heißen Sie?
Ich heiße Hoffmann.
Ja. Ja. Die Mariechen habe ich gekannt.
Ach was?
Ja. Die hat aber hier haben Sie nicht gewohnt, Sie haben ja hier gewohnt. Ja.
Ja, schau an. Ja. Wer hat denn hier gewohnt?
Der Frau Martin, der Heißwort.
Der hat auch hier gewohnt.
Ja, hier bei der Heißwort gewohnt.
Ja. Das ist
So, was ist denn aus der Mariechen geworden?
Ach, die ist tot, ja.
Na, war die nicht mit nach Amerika gegangen?
Nein.
Ach, da war doch ein Amerikaner da.
Ein Amerikaner war da. Ja, nee.
Und dann war sie auf einmal weg.
Ja.
Da war sie mal nach Leipzig gezogen und dann hat es geheißen.
Ja, nach Leipzig, da erinnere
nach Leipzig, ja.
Und Mariechen ist deine Mutter?
Ja.
Mariechen ist meine Mutter, ja.
Können wir die Tür hier unten probieren?
Das ist alles zu. Sie kennen vor dir, aber es ist zu. Das weiß ich. Ach nee, da ist auf.
Ach?
Aber da gehen Sie nicht ans Fenster, bitte. Da gehen Sie aber nicht ans Fenster, wenn Sie kommen.
Vermeiden, da gehe ich mal vor.
Da haben Sie das aufgelassen, sehen Sie? Das war Ihre Küche.
Ja.
Das war die Küche.
Ja, das ist schon so, ja.
Gut, da will ich noch nicht von den anderen ausgezogen.
Tür vorne?
Ich muss Sie noch mal fragen, warum sind Sie weg von uns?
Bitte? Warum?
Ja?
Ja, weil ich hier nicht leben konnte. Was sollte ich hier machen? Warum? Ja, weil ich nicht hier leben wollte und nicht hier leben konnte eigentlich. Und ich wollte
Ging Sie denn so schlecht hier bei uns?
Ja, gar nicht gut. Entschuldigung, es ging mir biestig. Das war schrecklich.
Weshalb denn?
Ja, mein Gott, weil ein junger Mensch was von der Welt sehen will. Ein junger Mensch nicht nur zu Hause in seinem Wänden hocken will.
Da ging Sie wie Ihre Mutter, ne? Die wollte auch gerne ein bisschen was sehen.
Ja, wir wollten weg. Ja, das stimmt. Ja.
Und ich bin ja schon so ewig so alt wie ich bin in Limbach, aber ich will nicht weg.
Sie wollen nicht weg?
Nein.
Ja, ab einem gewissen Alter, da ist man lieber zu Hause.
Nein, überhaupt nicht wollte ich weg.
Ich wollte
auch nie mit irgendein anderes Land. Nie.
Ja, nee. Waren Sie mal im anderen Land?
Nein.
Who could have said we belonged together, my father and myself, out walking, our hands held behind our backs in the way Goethe recommended? I was taller and faster, but more considerate. Tense, overgrown, there on sufferance, I slowed down and stooped for you. I wanted to share your life. Ich suche einen Jugendfreund meines Vaters, der heißt Manfred Malz. Kennen Sie einen Herrn Malz?
Kenne ich nicht.
Kenne ich nicht. Er soll, glaube ich, in dieser Straße
Ja,
leben.
keine Ahnung.
Sie kennen ihn nicht. Dankeschön.
Nein, bitte.
Entschuldigung. Hallo? Wissen Sie, wo ein Herr Malz wohnt? Ein Herr Malz? Ein Herr Malz? Ein Manfred Malz? Manfred Malz?
Forgetfulness, yeah. Well, I wrote 2 books about this problem of forgetting, But as I'm very forgetful myself, I can't tell you too much about it, In one aspect, this is a political question, because many Germans tended some time ago to forget things, to make things of their past disappear. They didn't want to think about it, to talk about it.
As a child, I sort of believed my father to be a high being who came out of nowhere. But, I mean, since there is now to be a past and so on, I suppose the more extensive, the better. Ihr Vater war damals recht groß, ich meine, groß und dürre, wie ich.
Nicht dürre ist er nicht gewesen, eigentlich.
Ja, damals
Das war eigentlich nie dürre.
Nee, nie dürre.
Nee, da war immer bekräftigt.
Aha.
Das sieht man auch hier im Gesicht. Das ist ihre Oma oder als seine Mutter.
Aha. Und wissen Sie, wann das habe ich auch noch nie gesehen, das Bild hier. Sie muss damals noch recht jung gewesen sein.
Ja. Sie war ja 18, als ich ihn gerade hatte.
18?
Ja, und das 42, da waren wir ja erst 11 Jahre, da war sie 29.
Und Ihr Mann?
Ihr Mann,
oder Gerts Vater?
Das ist der Stiefvater.
Das ist der Stiefvater?
Den hat sie aus 44 geheiratet.
Aha.
Nicht zu fassen. Aber das Bild habe ich schon mal gesehen, aber ich kann dich jetzt nicht finden. Ja. Ist ja nicht zu fassen.
Weißt du nicht, was du bist?
Nee?
Ja.
Der lange Dürre.
Eine Dürre, ne.
So kann man nicht sagen, nee.
Nein. Und ich bin ja vorne.
Ja.
Und Lena.
Ja.
Kennst du den noch?
Und was sagst du zu den Bildern? Ich meine, du siehst eigentlich, für mich siehst du eigentlich nie kindlich aus. Ich habe kein kindliches Bild von dir gesehen.
Nee. Ja, an das Bild erinnere ich mich. Ja. Es ist.
Ich meine, das sind sicher die Moden, oder was?
Bitte?
Das sind sicher die Moden, die du damals.
Nee, gar nicht. Das ist die Pimp-Uniform. Das ist, nicht wahr? Das ist mit der Knoten, da hatte ich so einen Knoten hier und ein Tuch darum. Und ich war damals ein Hitlerjunge.
Ja.
Nicht mal Hitlerjunge, ein Pimp nannte man das. Hitlerjunge ist man erst ab 14, nicht wahr? Das hieß Jungvolk, ja. Mitglied des Jungvolk.
Then Grandfather put on his artist's hat, and we went off to the Deutsches house. Grandfather said, "At least you can have a proper discussion there." He wanted to propose a revival of the silent film in the context of national regeneration. Only he didn't get around to it. He kept looking at his watch and asking how many hours till the next meeting. The Kinoerzähler becoming a Nazi, I think, in a way, is a bit of a problem for the book, because it connects this figure with which we're to feel sympathy, and which my father feels sympathy and has put a lot of himself. It turns the artist into a sort of fascist figure, which is I don't know, a liability.
Ich glaube, da macht man sich ein falsches Bild. Für die Kinder ist ein Kriegszustand eigentlich eher, das gibt ja so Gefühle des Abenteuers und so, und die werden da angestachelt, würde ich sagen.
Ja.
Ich meine, wir haben an der Welt, an der Situation gelitten, wir haben an dem Mangel an Nahrungsmitteln gelitten. Wir haben darum gelitten, dass die Väter nicht da waren. Dass wir, aber selbst das empfindet man eher als Befreiung als Kind, wenn der Vater nicht im Haus ist.
I don't know whether my grandfather was a Nazi. I mean, it wouldn't at all surprise me if he was. Were you ever interested in finding out who your actual father was? And
No, absolutely not. No.
Why?
Why should I? I mean, it doesn't interest me. I mean, from a certain point on, I was busy enough, had a lot of spiritual fathers, I had a lot of authors and artists to think of as my fathers. And so my bodily father was of absolutely no interest to me. Maybe I'm not so terribly interested in this, in the people who came before me, because I knew who they were. There was no mystery about it. I knew them so well, my grandfather and grandmother, and what have you, that I could easily forget them, and I didn't feel there's a hole in my life, I don't know who my grandfather is, I actually didn't care for him till I approached a certain age, where he became all of a sudden relevant, I had to think about it, and I had to, well, I can't say to write about it, but to reconstruct him, and that's what I did, the reconstruction of a grandfather and a grandmother, because at this stage of my life, they have had to come to life again.
Ja. Zählt da dein leiblicher Vater dazu?
Well, I don't know him. I can't write about my father. Shall I?
Du weißt diesen Ursprung?
I don't know about him. He didn't belong to my past. He's never turned up. I shall write about him.
In the Kinoerzähler, the father's been mentioned a couple of times as somebody who's not there and about whom nothing is known. Maybe in another book more will be revealed. I don't know.
An dieser Stelle ist die Geburt und die Taufe verzeichnet von Kurt Gert Karl Hoffmann. Er ist am 29. Januar in Limbach geboren und am 25. Oktober des gleichen Jahres, 1931, hier in der Stadtkirche getauft worden. Seine Mutter, Marie Anna Hoffmann, eine Haustochter in Limbach-Oberfrohna. Hier stehen seine Paten.
Und nichts von Vater?
Das ist ein leerer Fleck, da steht sonst der Name des Vaters. Ja. Dafür aber steht in dieser Spalte erstes Kind, erster Sohn, unehelich.
Ja.
Das ist in damaliger Zeit nicht so furchtbar häufig, aber es kommt vor. Auf dieser Seite ist es der einzige derartige Eintrag. Ja. Für die Frau vielleicht nicht ganz so sehr, aber hier ist ein kleiner Eintrag, der das ein bisschen deutlich macht. Zum Schulanfang hat der Gert Hoffmann einen besonderen Besuch des Pfarrers bekommen. Man war der Meinung, dass ein Kind, das keinen Vater hat, in besonderer Weise betreut werden muss.
Also wollte man ihn nicht nennen? Oder man konnte es nicht?
Wahrscheinlich. Es ist allerdings auch möglich, man konnte es nicht nennen.
Ja. Und aus seinen ersten Namen ist das Kurt Gert Karl ist auch nichts. Da wird man auch nicht schlau.
Der Zusatzname Karl deutet auf seinen Großvater hin.
Ja.
Und aus Kurt, nein, das lässt sich nicht schließen.
Nein. Es ist schön, dass das hier oben so dasteht, 1931. Ich war selber nämlich nie sicher. Das Geburtsjahr meines Vaters schien einigermaßen meistens vorzuwandeln.
Ja. Nein, das ist also authentisch, 1931. Ist sogar nachmittags 7:30 Uhr die Geburtsstunde eingetragen.
Well, I think the little white square on the parish register here means that my father is sort of free to invent himself. and later start looking for himself, sort of beyond the inventions or in spite of the inventions. Whereas I suppose the fact of my having caught Gert Hoffman in the corresponding square in my register, in my entry, gives me this kind of rather intense, occasionally rather unpleasant preoccupation with the content of this square. I would very much believe and hope there's some kind of kinship in our writing, in the kind of things that interest us, and certainly I feel it very much with you when I read your novels. And
yeah.
I suppose I did think at the time. I thought that as a writer, as a literary person, I thought you would read me as literature.
That's hard. After all, you are my son, you know, and they are full of reproach towards my person and towards your mother as well. And so I read them not so much, and I don't see a way, you know, that I can say, oh, that's very nicely put, you know. You are reproaching me to be a despicable father, you know, how well said.
Not only. Yeah.
No?
No, not really. I mean, even...
And I can always answer to these reproaches or to this kind of thing in my behavior, you know, towards you, you know. I could change my behavior, or I could talk to you more and all that, you know. But when I read them for the first time, I was offended, you know, and I didn't want to say anything about them, you know. I just let things go and let better times will come, you know. And he write better, not better, but different poems about my person, you know, or his mother's person. So on, you know.
Yes.
It's something which is going on, I think, between father and son and mother and inside one family, which all of a sudden, you know, by being published, you know, is there, you know, and it's no longer between us, you know, where it should be, you know, we should talk about it, you know, but by publishing a poem or story about that, you know, this is the wrong way, I think, to go about that, you know. But of course, I mean, your way as a poet's way to react to these things is by writing a poem about it, you know. And not just to say, listen, there's something which I can't understand and let's talk about it, you know. You're full of maybe grief or hatred or what have you. And you said, I have to put this down on paper because that's... being a writer, that's my way to react to things, you know.
It's a dead poem if it's a private message, and the thing is that these things were poems and not private messages. So in some way, I think you could justifiably feel they didn't concern you.
Well, yes, but what shall I do, you know? I mean, you know, when I am confronted with a poem, you know, I think, first of all, I mean, the man wants to know, do you like this as a poem, you know, do you... And for me, it was a bit crude, you know, maybe it was a very fine poem, you know, but as a message, you know, it was a rather a crude thing, and that's the way I felt it, you know, and well, but this was a very, don't think one should make too much of that, you know. That was a very ephemeral thing, you know, just passed a long time ago.
Perhaps with acrimony, perhaps I even wanted to sort of sting him to see if he jumped. And he did jump, but it was possibly the last time. I mean, if you have the power to hurt someone, I suppose it means that they still love you or something like that. And I wanted to be assured of that.
Vorgetragen. Vielen Dank. Bitte dich.
Ich tue diese Arbeit mit viel Stolz und auch mit, wie Sie verstehen, mit einigem Bedauern. Aber ich werde sie möglichst gut verrichten, so gut ich es jedenfalls kann. Mein Großvater, Karl Hoffmann, 1873 bis 1944, arbeitete lange im Apollo-Kino in der Helenenstraße in Limbach, Sachsen. Ich kannte ihn gegen sein Lebensende mit seinem Künstlerhut, dem Spazierstock, dem breiten Ehering aus Gold, der dann und wann nach Chemnitz ins Pfandhaus ging, doch immer wieder kam. Auf die Idee, mit einem Stock zu laufen, hat er mich gebracht, lange nach seinem Tode. Er hatte Probleme mit den Zähnen und sagte, wenn überhaupt, werde ich mal vom Gebiss aus sterben. Schließlich brachte ihn etwas ganz anderes um.